A country in North America is now considering joining the European Union, but what more can we do to assist Canadian companies in joining any of the 27 member states? Despite the fact that 44% of Canadians are in favor of the idea, who would lose the most in early 2025 if it were to happen? According to an Abacus data survey, 44% of Canadians support joining the European Union. However, what might cause one of America's closest allies to consider leaving the country? It all started with growing trade tensions between the Trump administration and Ottawa. Trump increased Canadian steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, imposed a 25% tax on Ontario's electricity, and made the contentious claim that Canada should become the 51st state in the Union. No one realizes this, and keep in mind that we don't need their cars, lumber, energy, or anything else from Canada, yet it costs us $200 billion annually in subsidies to keep Canada afloat. When I say that they should become a state, I mean that. We can't be expected to carry a country that, is right next to us on our border. It would be a great state, a beloved state. While social media was urging Canada to leave America and join Europe, the government of Canada responded strategically rather than verbally. Article 49 of the Treaty on European Union stipulates that only European nations may apply for EU membership, and it is obvious that Canada is not in Europe. However, here's the twist. There is no precise legal definition of European country under EU treaties. Although Cyprus is located in Western Asia, it was recognized because of its historical, cultural, and political ties to Europe. Despite dispute, Turkey is still an official contender because of these long-standing geopolitical ties. What about Canada? Numerous analysts note that it has bilingualism in English and French and public health that is comparable to that of the majority of EU countries. It has been a member of NATO for a long time and has a robust democracy and advanced market economy. Democracy and a healthy market economy are two of the three Copenhagen criteria that Canada already satisfies. The third would be the largest obstacle to joining the EU, fully implementing EU regulations. It would probably be necessary for Canada to update its legal and regulatory frameworks, adjust trade tax arrangements, and agriculture requirements. If full EU membership proves to be too unrealistic politically or legally, Canada still has ways to get closer to Europe without becoming a formal member, such as by switching from the Canadian dollar to the euro, which would allow EU citizens to travel freely and potentially weaken the Supreme Court's authority in some areas. The Norway model, which is not a member of the EU but has complete access to its single market, complies with the majority of EU laws and does not have the ability to vote in EU decision-making, offers greater flexibility but necessitates years of bilateral agreements with the EU and is prone to delays and deadlocks. Through the Trade and Cooperation Agreement (TCA), the UKCS post-Brexit model continues trade and defence cooperation despite no longer being an EU member. Prime Minister Mark Carney wants to go even further, even though Canada already has the CDI deal with the EU, which removes more than 90% of tariffs. Canada is prepared to bring its relationship with the EU to a level never before seen in our history. If Canada decides to align itself more with Europe than with the US, the repercussions will go beyond just economic issues. They will go right to the core of America's strategic and symbolic power on the economic front. If Canada harmonizes its standards, the US may encounter new trade barriers aligned with the EU. American businesses may no longer have preferential access to the Canadian defense market. The United States' sway over the Arctic might erode. Canada might expand its involvement in European defense and security frameworks. Considering the United States' image and symbolism, the Western alliance may be deeply shattered. A nation that was before referred to as America's twin is now moving toward Brussels. Brussels, don't turn away. There is still a lot more to discover in the upcoming chapter about Mexico. America. Claudia Sheinbaum has issued a strong statement and declared war on Trump. We won't back down from a declaration this forceful. Will it be sufficient to persuade Trump to reconsider? In addition to resisting US policies that safeguard its own interests, Mexico is also acting strongly in response, placing Trump in a challenging position as he threatens to levy further tariffs. Mexico has begun enacting its own retaliatory measures, such as supplying parts to significant Detroit automakers in the event that Mexico decides to raise auto part tariffs. The United States imported more than $60 billion worth of parts from Mexico in 2022, which might lead to a sharp increase in car prices and have an immediate effect on American consumers. Mexico is a significant provider of energy and agricultural items to the US. If it were to impose restrictions on these exports, food costs would skyrocket, thereby impacting the lives of Americans. The US supermarket industry depends heavily on Mexican meat, vegetables, and fruits, and any disruption in this supply chain would result in price increases across the country. Mexico has even threatened to temporarily close its borders, which would paralyze the US supply chain. A nation that shares a border with the US could use it as a strategic weapon, with dire consequences for the US economy. The situation gets even worse when Sheinbaum declares that Mexico will not serve as a humanitarian checkpoint for the US. Mexico says it will not stop the flow of migrants just because the US asks it to. This means that Trump will face a serious humanitarian crisis if the migrants continue to flood the Mexico-US border. This doesn't just happen at any time, though. It happens right in the middle of the 2025 election season. If the migrant flow is not controlled, it could lead to a very tense political crisis for the Trump administration. A military-controlled buffer zone along the US-Mexico border is reportedly something the Trump administration is considering. This could put active duty troops in close proximity to illegal migrants, raising serious legal concerns. However, will this be deemed illegal, and what will it mean for immigration enforcement? This will be a very delicate topic during an election year. Mexico is in charge of registering and screening millions of migrants annually, mostly from Central American nations like Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, according to noteworthy data. If Mexico ceases to cooperate, more than 100,000 migrants might enter the US each month, resulting in an extraordinary migratory catastrophe that goes beyond economic retaliation. A movement against US hegemony is currently being ignited by Mexico. Loudly states, "We will live in freedom and dignity on our own land, not at the command of Washington." Other Latin American nations, such as Venezuela, also supported this message, which equally astonished Washington. Brazil and Cuba. This represents a new wave of opposition to US hegemony in the region. If Mexico keeps going in this direction, an alliance of Latin American countries may oppose US intervention in the region as a whole. Will the US take even more drastic action in response to Mexico's pressure? Or will Mexico actually withstand it? Keep checking back to examine these tense developments. Republican town hall meetings have recently been the focus of intense criticism and public outrage due to controversy surrounding Republican budget cuts and town halls. In response, the party has made the controversial decision to stop holding public town halls. But why did they do so? Is it a necessary move given the current circumstances, or is it a tactic to avoid voter confrontation? Why have town halls descended into such chaos? Originally intended to promote candid conversation, town halls have descended into heated disputes in a number of states. Voters are quite concerned about the new policies. Why are you reducing benefits for healthcare? Educators, veterans, and nurses are impacted. Who will assume accountability? Why doesn't the government reduce public benefits and instead pursue other solutions? Numerous legislators have found it difficult to offer adequate responses. The National Republican Congressional Committee, NRCC, has recommended suspending public town halls to stop further disruptions after some ended too soon, and others went on in an extremely tense environment. However, is this a sensible solution or just an effort to avoid responsibility? The problem with the budget. How do Republicans defend their choices? From a Republican standpoint, they contend that budget cuts are necessary rather than arbitrary. According to some politicians, we cannot continue overspending without a clear plan to balance the budget. As the national debt is rapidly increasing and the economy faces significant risks in the future if corrective action is not taken. It's difficult to reduce benefits, but if we don't take action now, future generations will have to shoulder a greater burden. The government must reduce spending and give priority to vital programs in order to maintain long-term financial stability. But detractors claim that these policies are directly hurting working-class people, teachers, nurses, and veterans. How can policymakers strike a balance between maintaining public welfare and maintaining financial stability? Backlash against J.D. Vance while on vacation is an indication of the public's mounting discontent. Town halls aren't the only places where people are protesting. Vice President J.D. Vance has also been at the heart of public discontent. While on vacation at a ski resort in Vermont, he was confronted by irate locals. "The government is cutting funds and you're off skiing," is written on a few of the placards. J.D. Vance was forced to depart quietly to contemplate once the situation worsened. The public's mounting annoyance, but the administration maintains that these budget cuts are required to guarantee the nation's long-term financial stability rather than provide temporary respite. Republican lawmakers contend that some segments of the populace are overreacting to these legislative changes in the discussion over whether or not citizens are overreacting. Donald Trump has claimed that a large number of town hall protests appear to be planned, suggesting that not all attendees are reflective of the larger audience. Lisa Milan also queries how strong the public reaction is. Budget changes may be difficult at first, but they will eventually help stabilize the economy. We cannot keep spending without taking the long-term effects into account. The question of whether these protests are entirely justified or whether there are other factors influencing public perception still stands, because some people may not see the immediate benefits, but we need to adopt a broader perspective. Critics counter that these policies are causing immediate hardships for the working class and that lawmakers should listen to their constituents rather than restricting public discussions. Influence on politics. Beyond the potential effects on the economy, how will this influence the upcoming election for Republicans? Budget cuts are popular among conservatives, stressing the importance of a responsible government guarantees stability over the long run. Working-class voters and Democrats must make short-term sacrifices. These cuts give rise to worries. There are cuts being made to key services. Families in the middle and lower income brackets will be the most affected. Within hours of Trump's shocking announcement, hundreds of billions of dollars disappeared from the markets as the markets panicked after he imposed a 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico that would take effect tomorrow. In a jaw-dropping moment, Trump also made fun of struggling American farmers and told them to get over their setbacks. Wall Street experienced its worst trading day in months as fear and uncertainty took hold. Jones fell 1.48% lower. Nasdaq fell negative 2.64% and S&P 500 down negative 1.76%. Bitcoin continues to decline 8%. However, this is a full-blown panic, not just a knee-jerk response. The crypto market crashed instantly after Trump's unexpected tariffs sent investors reeling, with Bitcoin falling more than 8% and altcoins following even further into the red. This is because traders fear that Trump's economic decisions have become wildly unpredictable, and they believe that this is just the beginning of something much worse. This most recent action erodes trust in the U.S. economy, escalating worries about slower growth, greater inflation, and possibly a potential recession. Prices for imported goods, including vehicles, cell phones, appliances, and groceries, will increase quickly as a result of Trump's America First trade war. Tariffs will also result in hidden taxes that affect regular Americans as well as foreign firms. Farmers in America will suffer. If they respond, as they will, Canada and Mexico will purchase billions of dollars worth of U.S. agricultural products. Big business is having problems, and American farmers could lose important markets overnight. Automobile manufacturers, businesses, and tech companies that depend on Canada, imports from Mexico will have to reduce expenses or increase prices. Job losses and layoffs could occur if business margins decline. As businesses deal with increased expenses, unemployment may increase. They may reduce their workforce or slow down the hiring process, and factories and manufacturing jobs will be the ones that are most negatively impacted. Deal with the problem of rising prices. Both Canada and Mexico swiftly replied by warning of strong countermeasures against U.S. goods in reaction to Trump's comments, which seemed to cheer up both countries. Canada is going to respond with a powerful blow. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has pledged to get retribution by imposing a tariff of 25% on items worth $155 billion from the United States. This includes significant exports from the United States, merchandise for the consumer market, vehicles, and agricultural products. Mexico is not backing down either, and Mexico's trade minister has warned that simple duties could possibly block billions of dollars worth of exports from the United States. Mexico is also in discussions with China and Europe to replace American supplies. The reality is that this may be disastrous for American enterprises who are dependent on exports to Canada and Mexico. It is possible that U.S. corporations might lose billions of dollars in sales if a full-blown trade war breaks out. Let's be clear. Canada and Mexico don't need the United States as much as they used to if they move their focus to China and the European Union. This situation will result in the loss of jobs and a significant slowdown in economic growth. It is possible that the United States of America will lose its dominant position in the commerce economy of North America. Although Trump asserts that this will make the United States of America stronger, renowned economists warn that this could backfire in a significant way, as investors may quit the United States. Financial institutions around the world despise instability. If Trump's actions continue to shake the markets, capital will migrate elsewhere. We could be destroyed by supply networks. Since many sectors are strongly dependent on inputs from Canada and Mexico, tariffs make everything more expensive and cause disruptions in the manufacturing process. There is a possibility that inflation would skyrocket, which would result in higher prices for American consumers. If inflation continues to climb at an alarming rate, it may cause the economy to slow down. As businesses continue to struggle and unemployment rates continue to rise, there is a growing concern that the United States of America is on the verge of experiencing an economic downturn. If Canada and Mexico diversify their trade links, the United States of America may lose its grasp on the leadership position in North American trade. President Trump is placing a significant amount of money on economic nationalism, but if he is wrong, he could lose its trade dominance. People living in the United States of America will be the ones to bear the consequences of what was once a potent emblem of the MAGA movement. Donald Trump and his allies are now facing a wave of backlash across the United States, and even in Canada from Texas, a Republican stronghold to Toronto, where a crowd erupted in boos during the U.S. national anthem. The anger is growing. Have people turned their backs on Trump, Or is this just a temporary reaction in Texas, where Trump previously won by a landslide? Something unusual happened at a town hall meeting for Congressman Keith Self, a loyal MAGA member. The crowd erupted in boos and furious protests as a Republican representative in Texas's 3rd congressional district, where Trump holds a plus 30-point advantage over Democrats. Keith Self was expected to receive strong support. Instead, he was attacked by his own voters. At the event, the crowd chanted, "Do your job, do you?" The fact that they have expressed their profound dissatisfaction with the policies of the MAGA presents an important question. If even Trump's most devoted fans are turning against him, will he be able to keep his political stronghold? At a WWE event in Toronto, as the United States national anthem was playing, the crowd erupted in anger. The reason for this was because of President Trump's aggressive policies against Canada, which include threatening to annex Canada, which is a shocking and unacceptable idea, and imposing steep tariffs on Canadian goods, which severely damage the economy of the country. A serious breakdown in US-Canada relations, which were once considered to be one of the strongest alliances in the world, has occurred as a result of Canadians beginning to boycott American products and restricting travel to the United States as a means of protesting Trump's administration. If Trump continues down this path, not only Canada, but the entire world may turn against him, and protests against Trump are growing louder. American society and the economy are currently experiencing a crisis. On the other hand, what is Trump doing? He is not conducting emergency meetings or implementing solutions. Instead, he is playing golf. Images of Trump resting on the golf course have been circulating, despite the fact that the challenges of the United States have provoked enormous public discontent. Trump continues to act as if nothing is happening, despite the fact that inflation continues to be a burden on the middle class and working Americans are protesting against budget cuts around the country. Is this how a leader should behave amid a national crisis when average Americans are finding it difficult to make ends meet? The new budget plan proposed by Trump provides significant tax reductions to the rich while simultaneously reducing crucial services for the most disadvantaged members of society. Reduced funding for Medicaid. The reduction of $880 billion from Medicaid by Trump leaves millions of people without access to medical treatment. The elderly, the disabled, and families with low incomes are the ones who are suffering the most from the education crisis. Hospitals in rural areas may close down. The prices of prescription drugs will skyrocket. As a result of a reduction of $400 billion in financing for public schools and student aid, there would be fewer teachers, greater class sizes, and higher tuition, which will make college unaffordable for special education and low-income schools. While farmers struggle, food prices continue to climb as a result of cuts to farm assistance totaling $300 billion. There are food shortages, rising grocery prices, and the possibility of bankruptcy for small farmers. Big businesses are taking over agriculture, and billionaires are getting wealthy while the average American is suffering. The ultra-wealthy will receive tax benefits totaling trillions of dollars under Trump's plan. Billions of dollars are saved by the top 1%. Less laws mean greater corporate greed and pollution, which is not beneficial to workers, students, farmers, or senior citizens. Rather, it is beneficial to the wealthy elite. Companies continue to amass money while salaries for workers remain stagnant. Despite the fact that Trump portrays this budget as an attempt at economic reform, it is, in fact, a direct assault on the middle class and the working class. How much longer can the American people continue to pay the price?